There's a good chance that we have a top for a decade. This is the big top, like the top in 2000, 2001, like the top in 1966, before that big bear market. And I think by the time we make a new high in the Dow, it will only be because of inflation. In real terms, I probably won't live to see the Dow make a new high. Certainly the NASDAQ. I mean, I don't think I'll live to see the NASDAQ make a new high adjusted for inflation. I'll probably see it make a new high in nominal terms, but then, everything goes up. If you have hyperinflation, I mean, look how high the Zimbabwe stock market went up in Zimbabwe dollars, but who cares about Zimbabwe dollars? And pretty soon, people might be saying, who cares about US dollars? It's pretty obvious that this is gonna happen. The world is hemorrhaging right now from the dollar standard. The fact that the dollar has been so strong against the pound, against the euro, against the yen, that is exacerbating their problems. We are exporting our inflation to the rest of the world, and now they're having to deal with it. The problem is we just print money. We have these massive trade deficits. We're importing all this stuff. We're sucking up the goods. You know who gets this? Vladimir Putin. Listen to some of his speeches. He understands this parasitic relationship that we have with the world, where we just print money and we buy stuff. We don't have to make the stuff. The rest of the world makes the stuff. We just create the inflation to pay for it. We are spreading misery all around the world, and we are living off the fruits of the rest of the world. And the world is like, no, we don't want to do this anymore. There's going to be a revolution against this system, because the winner is the United States. The loser is everybody else. Now, as an American, yeah, this was a good deal for us, but I know that it's not going to go on forever, because the rest of the world is not going to stand for it. And we've really pushed them in that direction recently by weaponizing the dollar. The stuff that we're done recently, with sanctions on Russia. This is just accelerating that process. How do you know for sure that positive real rates are needed? Why wouldn't 5% put downward pressure on inflation? So this is simple. The reason you have inflation, right? Governments create money, and you have spending. You have too much demand. Well, and you don't have enough savings. How do you change that? Well, if interest rates are positive, if I can earn a real rate of return, I'll save my money instead of spending it. And that's going to take away demand in the present, but it's going to increase supply in the future. Why? Because if I don't spend money, if I save that money is now available for capital investment. So businesses can take my savings and use it to build a factory to make more stuff. So the Federal Reserve has to discourage people from borrowing and encourage them to save. That's why we need high real interest rates. But let's say inflation is 8% and the Federal Reserve raises interest rates to 3%. Still negative 5%. Am I going to be incentivized to save money? I mean, yes, losing 5% is not as bad as losing 8%, but who the hell wants to lose 5%? If I know I'm going to lose 5% on my savings, I ain't going to save. I'm still going to spend. And so if the government is not cutting back on my spending, I'm still spending everything and saving nothing, they're not going to bend that inflation curve. You've got to encourage savings. Where is savings right now? It's the lowest it's been since the 2008 financial crisis. Americans are spending everything. And in fact, what does the government want to do? Gas prices are up. Oh, we need to give people more money so they can buy those, so they can pay higher prices. No, people have to buy less gas. That's what they need to do. We can't just give them more money to keep buying it. Then the price will keep going up. So the government is not allowing the free market to do what needs to be done. We're a lot poorer because the government created all this inflation. We've got an enormous government that we've got to pay for. And how do we pay for all this government? Again, we don't get it for free. We're going to pay for it with a lower standard of living. Either we're going to have less money because the government takes our money, or we're going to have inflation because the government takes our purchasing power. That's it. There is no free lunch. Do you agree that all central banks should be dissolved, including the Fed? Yeah, I believe that the world would be better off without any central banks. Every country would be better off. The people would be better off. Governments like central banks because central banks help governments get bigger and manipulate economies. You don't want that. You want a free market. In a free market, you want the government to be as small as possible, and you want no artificial manipulation. You want free market forces in charge. That's how you have an optimal allocation of resources. That's how you have the highest collective standard of living, is in a free market. And central banks are an enemy of that. We don't need central banks. In fact, we need them now less than ever before. As I said, we can create our own monetary system based on gold, using blockchain, using the internet. Central banks have never been more irrelevant and useless than they are right now. We can create a medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value in the private sector, right? Everything you get from the private sector is better. It's more efficient, it's lower cost. The same thing with a monetary system. We don't need a government to create a monetary system. The free market can do it, and then the government can tax us. So if we're using gold as money, and then the government wants money to spend programs, they can tax us and take our gold and then spend it. But we don't want to empower governments to just create money out of thin air, because that lets them play Santa Claus. People think they get something for nothing. They don't. And if governments have to tax the people to pay for the things that the people want, all of a sudden the people won't want nearly as much stuff. As long as they think it's free, they want as much as they can get. The minute they realize they have to pay for it, they don't want it anymore. So no, we don't need any central banks. We can handle money on our own. What are your thoughts on taking out a mortgage to buy the GDXJ? Well, look, I mean, taking out a loan. Look, I have been discouraging people from leverage because of the possibility of margin calls and being liquidated. In fact, I think one of the reasons that we might have had such a big sell-off in the gold and silver stocks was because of how much leverage there was. People took on debt. And so it's a very dangerous thing. So I have just not encouraged people to do that. I think there's enough leverage in this trade. I think that people that get into gold stocks are going to make so much money. Can't guarantee that, but this is what I believe. I mean, I think some of these stocks can go up 50 times, 100 times. So with that kind of upside, you don't need leverage. Don't get greedy. Don't be a pig, right? Just invest what you have and you'll do fine, I think. You don't have to try to risk leverage and then potentially get, out of the game. And then you don't make anything because you got a margin call, you couldn't meet it, you had to sell your stocks at a ridiculously low price. So just invest what you have, and I think the returns will be good enough. Gold mining stocks in and of themselves are a leverage bet on gold. Why does it seem like 2008 so uniquely bad? People all over the political spectrum talk about how this is remnant of the global financial crisis. Pre-financial crisis didn't seem to have this carryover effect. Well, the reason is because of the amount of leverage that we have. Again, every time we get into a problem, the Fed covers up the problem with more monetary heroin, and then we have a bigger problem. And so we had a massive problem that erupted in 2008, and this one's going to be worse because we have a lot more debt now than we had then. That's why the problems weren't a crisis, because they hadn't developed to this degree. But now every problem is a crisis. That's why when they did QE the first time, they said it's a one-off event. We're never going to do it again. I knew in the beginning that was a lie, that once they did it, they were committed. They had checked us into a monetary roach motel. There was no way out. I said it from day one. I said it in 2008, and I was right. And I warned about hyperinflation, and people were laughing at me because it hadn't happened. It just hadn't happened yet. It's going to happen, and even if it's not hyperinflation, it's going to be massive. We've already got the worst inflation in 30 or 40 years, and in fact, if they measured it honestly, last year was really the worst inflation ever.